We begin, though, with the country's fight to control two spreading coronavirus variants.
Well, scientists try to figure out Omicron. The U.S. is seeing a rise in cases of the Delta variant. Nationwide, 99% of new cases are tied to Delta, with around 100,000 people now testing positive every day. Still, the list of states reporting cases of the Omicron variant is growing. The most recent state, Texas, was someone testing positive for the strain in the Houston area. Bottom line, no matter the strain, it's clear COVID is still spreading. That's leading to a rise in vaccinations and booster shots. Just this past week, more than 2 million Americans got a vaccine dose in one day, the highest in a single day since May. MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser joins us now from a pharmacy in Trenton, New Jersey, that is seeing a rise in vaccine demand. So, Lindsay, how are vaccinations going where you are right now? And do we know what is behind the new demand?
Good morning to you both. Yeah, so nationwide, we're seeing this uptick, and locally, we're also seeing it. Right now, we're in Trenton, New Jersey. That's in Mercer County. And we're going to put up a graphic showing right now what the demand is like. So right now in Mercer County, about 78.4% of people have gotten at least one dose. That's a pretty big jump from the beginning of November, when that number was about 72.8. These are numbers of how everybody stacks up compared to one another. But what is driving this demand, you ask? I mean, part of it is concern over the Omicron variant. One clinic that I talked to here in Trenton, New Jersey, they say anecdotally in the last week they've heard a lot of people talking about that. Also, employee mandates. Many believe maybe a decrease in vaccine hesitancy, the fact that booster expansion just happened as well. So let's hear from the chief medical officer from one of those clinics in Trenton, New Jersey, about the demand. By the way, recently they had an hour wait at one of their clinics. So the demand is definitely there. Let's listen to what she said.
We've been seeing a big mix, a significant increase in boosters, but also still some people coming in for first doses, children, both age 12 to 18 and also 5 to 11. That has significantly increased in the sense that about a month and a half ago, we were seeing maybe 15 to 20 vaccines in the 3 hours that we'd be at a standing location.
And this is also happening, Joe, as we just got the first confirmed Omicron case in New Jersey. It was a woman who was visiting the state. She's from Georgia, fully vaccinated. And so definitely when I'm talking to these people who are on the ground, they are telling us they are hearing people talk about Omicron, and that is driving some of this demand. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, it's not just first and second doses. It is also boosters. Are more people getting their booster shots because they're worried about the winter months and about Omicron?
So I talked to the American Pharmacists Association, and they say that right now it does appear that boosters are driving a lot of this demand nationwide. Those are the numbers that we're seeing. There are more people who are getting those boosters than first-time shots. And then that chief medical officer at the local clinic says about 2/3 of their shots right now are boosters. And so we know that people are hearing the news. They're hearing that immunity is waning. Let's listen to what the American Pharmacists Association told me as well yesterday.
I think with the new recommendation from CDC, which says that everybody greater than 18 years and above need to get their booster shot, I think that's driven people to get the vaccine, driven by the new variant and the reports that are there, and the uncertainty right now of that variant and how the vaccine will work, what will be the severity of the disease.
And so this pharmacy, this private pharmacy that I'm in front of right now, they open at 9 o'clock, but we're told, Joe, that they are going to start opening on Sundays from 10 to 6. They normally were closed, but they need to accommodate the demand. Joe?
And Lindsay, how does New Jersey compare with what we're seeing nationwide when it comes to vaccination rates?
Yeah, Joe, we showed you a graphic at the top. We're going to pull that up again so we can kind of break everything down. So in the U.S. right now, 71.1% of people of all ages have gotten at least one dose. When you go to New Jersey, that number does increase. And then here in Mercer County, the number is higher than the national average, a little lower than the state average. But right now, health officials are telling me that they are feeling like this is good news, that more people are getting out there. They're working on beefing up staffing. They're working on streamlining their systems. They're working on making systems appointment-based so they can really get a feel for what the volume is going to be like. But they say overall, with cases up, it is a good thing that more people are getting interested. Joe?
Lindsay Reiser in New Jersey. Thank you, Lindsay.
Now, concerns over the new variant and a rise in cases this winter are driving public health officials to put in place tougher vaccine mandates. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer shows us what one major city is doing as more healthcare systems are feeling the pressure.
With Omicron now discovered in nearly 20 states, the mayor of New York City is implementing the nation's most sweeping vaccine mandate for all private employers. By the end of this month, those who work in person must have at least one dose of a vaccine unless they qualify for an exemption.
We needed to do something bold quickly and get ahead of all of this.
With new testing restrictions also implemented for all travelers entering the U.S., our nation is bracing for Omicron, but already facing a disaster set into motion by Delta.
I used to wake up crying because I thought I was going to die.
Like 99% of those infected with the virus, Vera Martinez-Ruiz, who isn't vaccinated, likely has Delta.
I never thought it would get me, and it got me. And it's really scary.
Martinez-Ruiz is lucky to be alive and just as fortunate to have a hospital bed. At the San Juan Regional Medical Center in Farmington, New Mexico, the ICU is over 200% capacity. More than half the patients in the building have COVID.
This is our fifth wave, and this is clearly the most severe wave that we've had to endure.
In need of a lifeline, this rural hospital is now getting help. An HHS National Disaster Medical Team has been deployed to assist overwhelmed staff. Typically used on the front lines of natural disasters, they're now needed for a growing crisis inside hospitals.
For some Americans, the pandemic is becoming an afterthought. But that's not the reality on the ground.
COVID is still very much here. These are very bad, very sad situations that oftentimes don't have a very good ending.
That is most true here in the ICU, where cameras have never been allowed before.
All of these rooms are full.
All of these rooms are full of intubated COVID patients.
Authorities want the public to see how dire the situation is.
A lot of the sickest patients that are on this floor won't make it out of this floor.
The grim reality of Delta is often overlooked, and for the sickest, the writing is on the wall. Scribbled on far too many doors here reads the words anointed by Father Tim. Patients who've been given their last rites because the end may be near.
Scientists say it'll probably be a few more days until we know how dangerous the Omicron variant is, but Dr. Fauci believes early indications point to a more contagious variant, but not necessarily one that's more severe. That would be good news for those HHS teams that have up to 10 units deployed every month. Savannah and Joe, back to you guys.
Miguel Almaguer, thank you so much.
Dr. Amish Adalja joins us now. He's a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Doctor, good to have you with us. So let's talk about the new vaccine mandate for all private sector workers in New York City. Tell us more about what you make of it. Is this the kind of thing that's needed to get back to a somewhat normal in-person workplace again?
Many companies have really no tolerance for any kind of COVID risk, and the best way to do that is to have their workplace completely vaccinated. But many are reticent to do that on their own, so they sometimes fall back on government to do it for them. I think in a place like New York City, where the vaccination rate is very high, this is going to have, some impact. But what we need is people in parts of the country that vaccination rates are very low. So think about West Virginia, for example, where 41% of people are fully vaccinated. That's where we need vaccine numbers to go, because that's where those hospitals are in crisis. I think New York City is going to do well no matter what, because they've got so much vaccination demand, even without this mandate. But we'll see what happens, because the OSHA mandate is caught up in courts, and there are a lot of people dug in. I don't know if this is going to get a court challenge. I also want to know what the new mayor is going to do when he takes office.
Doctor, let's talk about what we do and don't really know so far about the Omicron variant. So it's obviously spreading across the country. It's now in at least 19 states. But when we look worldwide, let's look to South Africa, where this was first identified, first reported by doctors and scientists there, seeing one of the biggest impacts from the variant right now. Researchers there actually say people are getting this variant, and then they're much less sick than previous cases. That being said, the variant appears to be spreading faster. What do you think this means for the variant's impact on the global fight against the virus? How much of a setback do you think this will be if it might spread faster but with less severe symptoms?
I don't think it's a setback. I think we always expected that there were going to be new variants, and we know that COVID-19 was going to morph into a seasonal coronavirus eventually. Maybe this is the first step down that road where it's able to get around some of our immunity and spread efficiently, but cause less severe disease. Everybody's waiting to see if these reports from South Africa will be borne out and if they can be extrapolated to other countries. But you have to remember that COVID is not going anywhere. We're going to have COVID cases 20 years from now, but it's going to be a much milder, much more manageable infection. And maybe that's where this is going. But the key thing is to get more people vaccinated, because even if this gets around some amount of our vaccine protection, vaccines are not all or nothing. The vaccines are likely to protect you against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And that's really what matters.
Clearly, the issue right now is the Delta variant still makes up the vast majority of cases. So do you think we are seeing the start of another surge here?
I think that what we're seeing is people moving indoors. It's getting colder, people having pandemic fatigue, dropping some of their mitigations, and we're seeing cases go up. I think that was anticipated, and this is what coronaviruses do. They have seasonality to them, and this one does as well. And I think that's likely what we'll see every winter season, that we'll see some uptick. The goal is to make sure that those are not translating into hospitalizations and hospitals in crisis, and they are in certain parts of the country because there's not enough vaccination. I'm going to the hospital after this interview, and it's mostly unvaccinated individuals that are in those hospitals taking up hospital beds. This is a self-inflicted issue that we have because people are shunning this technology, the vaccine.
All right, Dr. Amish Adalja, thank you for joining us, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Doctor. To the White House now, where President Biden will hold high-stakes talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin today. Ukraine is expected to top the agenda in this morning's virtual meeting as tensions with neighboring Russia continue to escalate. Russia has been massing troops along the border with Ukraine. President Biden spoke with European leaders ahead of today's call, and the White House says it's ready to impose major economic sanctions on Russia if it invades Ukraine. NBC News White House correspondent Mike.
We've consulted significantly with our allies and believe we have a path forward that would impose significant and severe harm on the Russian economy. You can call that a threat. You can call that a fact. You can call that preparation, whatever you want to call it. But that is something we've talked about publicly, and certainly the president would convey that as well.
NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now for more on this. Mike, good morning. So what's President Biden's message to President Putin going to be on Ukraine? And also, are there any signs the U.S. could take any action beyond those economic sanctions I just mentioned?
Yeah, Savannah, that really is the number one question heading into this virtual meeting today between the U.S. and Russian presidents, the most significant, perhaps, conversation on foreign policy in the Biden presidency so far. The White House ruling out yesterday, or at least declining to address specifically the question of whether the United States is prepared to respond militarily to either deter a Russian invasion of Ukraine or to respond to one. Instead, they're trying to focus on the severe economic sanctions that the U.S. and our European allies are prepared to impose at this stage. And we saw the White House yesterday, the president specifically phoning some of our closest allies in Europe, the leaders of Italy, Germany, the UK, and France. The leaders, according to a statement from the White House afterwards, agreed on the importance of maintaining Ukraine's sovereignty. They also, we also saw Secretary of State Tony Blinken speaking with the Ukraine president yesterday. Here is the State Department spokesperson laying out how the U.S. is approaching this meeting.
If Moscow shows no interest in investing in a diplomatic off-ramp, that the United States and our partners, and we heard this loud and clear from our NATO allies in Riga last week, that we would be prepared to implement measures that we have not implemented in the past. Specifically, should Russia follow this path of confrontation and military action, we have made clear to Moscow that we will respond resolutely.
The president will be conducting this meeting from the Situation Room today, and White House officials say that in the days following this meeting, he will speak himself directly with Ukraine's president as well.
And now, Mike, Moscow has denied it's planning to invade Ukraine. So talk to us about President Putin's side of this today. What's he looking for here? What do you think we'll hear from him?
Well, we have to remember that President Putin is a former KGB officer, right? He has a view of Russia's borders that include territory in the Ukraine that led to, of course, the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But the very narrow, specific diplomatic question that we expect to be the focus for President Putin today, something he's going to be seeking a commitment from President Biden about, is NATO's whether Ukraine could potentially join NATO as a member of that alliance. We saw something of a scramble, you'll remember, when President Biden was attending the NATO summit in Brussels this summer, because Ukraine's president stated that the NATO alliance agreed to allow Ukraine to become a member. What the White House said afterwards and what the NATO officials said themselves was that they simply were underscoring a commitment that they made in 2008, laying out the conditions for Ukraine to potentially join NATO, but that there has not been progress enough at this stage for Ukraine to become a member.
And Mike, what else are both leaders expected to discuss today?
Obviously, the U.S.-Russia relationship is a complicated one, but one in which there's also potential alignment. And what the White House officials say, there is going to be a focus on issues like cybersecurity, a point of tension between those countries, but also energy prices. Obviously, Russia, a significant producer of energy. We're also going to see another diplomatic flare-up, U.S. seeking alignment with Russia as they try to resurrect those Iranian nuclear talks as well. Russia, a key partner in that P5+1 group that made that agreement under the Obama administration.
Mike Memoli for us from the White House. Thanks so much, as always, Mike.
Thanks.
The Justice Department is suing Texas over the Lone Star State's plans to redraw congressional districts within the state. Attorney General Merrick Garland made the announcement at a news conference yesterday, saying the state's plans unfairly discriminate against minority voters who have fueled the population boom in Texas. In response, the Texas Attorney General tweeted, "I'm confident that our legislators' redistricting decisions will be proven lawful, and this preposterous attempt to sway democracy will fail." MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Cynthia Oxney joins us now. Cynthia, good morning to you. First of all, walk us through the DOJ's case here. What are they arguing?
Okay, well, this is, let me just frame it. This is clearly Garland's passion. He's had voting rights cases in several states, Georgia, Louisiana, Arizona he's been involved in, and now this is his second voting rights case in Texas. And generally, the argument is Texas has grown by 2 million people, most of them Hispanic, and yet there are no districts where Hispanics actually might gain a seat in Congress. So 40% of the population in Texas is white, but they control 60% of the districts. And what he's saying is the manner in which the districts were drawn was purposefully drawn to minimize Latino voting strength, divide it, and allow the Republicans and particularly the whites to control the future elections.
Now, Cynthia, as I mentioned, the Texas Attorney General says he's confident his state will prevail. What's the argument being made by Texas Republicans to keep these redrawn congressional maps in place?
The argument by the Texans Republicans is, hey, we're just trying to get more Republican seats. And that's really the nub, isn't it? It's we're trying to get more Republican seats or we're trying to get more white seats. And what were they really drawing for? Since the Supreme Court opinion in about 2013, the Justice Department has the burden of proving that the districts were drawn for a discriminatory reason. It's a high bar, and it may be difficult to reach that bar. But that is what the Attorney General thinks he can do.
So, Cynthia, could a ruling on this case be decided ahead of the midterm elections next year? If so, what kind of impact would that have on the political landscape, not just in Texas, but really other states that have been redrawing their maps? Right.
Well, the maps are drawn. They've been accepted by the legislator in Texas and signed by the governor. Most likely, these are the maps that will go forward in the midterms. That is a reality. Redistricting cases and voting rights cases take a very long time. The maps could be changed at some point, but the most likely outcome is these are the maps that will be used in the midterms.
The midterms are coming quick, primaries even quicker in many of these states. Cynthia Oxney, thanks so much for your analysis. We appreciate it.
And let's now get a check on your morning news now weather.
Bill Cairns is with us. Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So quite a storm rolled through the Ohio Valley and East Coast last night with high winds. If anyone was watching that football game, it was pretty windy and snowy, too. And the worst of it, though, was in areas of Tennessee and Kentucky. This was a confirmed tornado damage in central Kentucky. They have 95-mile-per-hour winds. 4 mobile homes got pushed off their foundations. One man was in the mobile home you're seeing right there and was in it when it started flipping at night. Thankfully, he did not get too injured and is okay. But a lot of cleanup there. And also, how about this scene in Tennessee? A school bus, a driver was in it, no students, thankfully, flipped over when an RV hit it. An RV was blowing in the wind. It was not a tornado. They say it was actually just the winds as the cold front went through, but thank goodness no students were in that bus. So let's get to the weather now that the cold front has passed through. Winter has returned in a big way to many areas. We're not seeing a lot of snow out there this morning, just a little bit near the Great Lakes. As far as the temperatures, though, they have plunged. It's not like yesterday's incredible warmth, and it's actually brutally cold in a few spots. Notice the Green Bay temperature of 0. Minneapolis is at 9. Bismarck is at 7. So it's finally winter in the northern plains. But the wind chills are pretty cold. Even Nashville's at 22. Asheville's at 22. So the chilly air is with us. So it's going to be a cold winter day. There's not a lot of rain or snow out there today. Just a little bit of rain in Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. Tomorrow, that potential snow in the Northeast, not a lot to talk about. Maybe a coating out there. Boston, maybe 8 p.m. Wednesday, you go a little bit to rain over to snow. But as far as snowfall goes, nothing to write home about. Less than an inch everywhere in white. Maybe in Maine or coastal Maine, you could get 2 to 4 inches. But even by Maine standards, this is not a big deal. So for many people, still going to have to wait for your first official measurable snow of the year. So forecast for today, it could be worse, but it also could be better. 23 in Minneapolis, 23 in Chicago. But the good news is, guys, and I've been talking about this for a while, it's going to warm right back up after 2 cold days. By the weekend, we could be back in the 50s and 60s in areas like Minneapolis. So wow. Just a little taste of winter. Yeah, that's it.
And then we'll say it could be worse. So there you go. All right.
That's right.
I wish we were getting some snow. I'm ready for a little.
You say that.
I know, me too.
Bill, too. I thought you were going to say, no way. I'm not bringing out that shovel. All right. Thanks, Bill. See you in a little bit.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.